Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for logging into this podcast. I have Mayank here with me. A graduate from BMS College of Engineering in 2016. He also went on to then pursue a master's degree in food production management from the University of Nottingham. Since then, he has taken up a variety of roles around food tech, working with a lot of companies, both in product development and as a consultant, to now being an entrepreneur himself. He's the co-founder of the Soft Corner, Hookie, and is also now the co-founder of Good Gum, which is 100% plastic-free natural chewing gum. So all his ventures are now directed at making food more sustainable and working towards a more sustainable future that way. Mayank, anything I might have missed in the intro, please feel free to add on before we go.
Oh, it is perfectly on point.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the questions. And so we normally start off with people's journeys to sort of describe it. But with your profile, looking at the kind of innovations that you've done, and especially with working on such a pressing issue, such as sustainability, and with chewing gums, which we were also very surprised, by the way, to find out how they were so non-biodegradable. So it was like a big shocker for us. So when you approach problems in this sort of a domain, right, where you need a lot of, or this is in general for college students, because most of our target audience is from there. So in areas like these where the tech part becomes almost impossible to figure out on your own, and you really need some amount of domain expertise to sort of wrap your head around it and to work on it. For the young audience out there who are low on like this knowledge and their budget, what would you suggest to tackle such issues if they're interested in it when it comes to first hiring a consultant? And to have someone with know-how, that's like the first part of the question. Second, we'll also address how finding the right co-founder in these cases becomes more and more important as opposed to, let's say, other ventures. So first, let's talk about having a consultant and what that approach looks like.
Understood. So, I wouldn't say, like the first thing to correct you here, I wouldn't say the only way to go about business is by hiring a consultant. Because there is a lot of knowledge out there on the internet. If you are inquisitive, if you're curious enough, you can figure out your own way. Right, like there are many times when I consult for companies, and for me, I feel like, okay, you know what, this is superiorly simple. The company could have solved for it by themselves. It's just because they want to get it done faster, and because they have the money for it, they probably want to hire me for it, right? But when it comes to students, when they're on a tight budget, when they're bootstrapped and it's just a novel idea, I would say, spending a good amount of time personally on that idea, on that topic, try to figure out on that topic initially by themselves is what it should be like. And post which is when they should actually look for a consultant. And there are a lot of consultants out there, like for my example, I'll give you my own example, right? Like I graduated in 2017 from after my master's, and then I worked for a company for a year. And 2019 onwards, with just 1 year of experience, I was consulting, right? And the kind of clients I worked with were people who did not require a lot of expertise, right? But they just needed some person to guide them. So there are consultants, or there are newbie consultants out there that could match your budget. So you just have to, do a bit of mining on LinkedIn to try and find those people. And they can make your work easier, right? And that it becomes a win-win for me. For example, again, giving my own example, for me, it was an experiment, and for them it got their problem solved at a cheaper price, right? So both of us had a win-win in this scenario. So for people who want to become consultants, and for people who want to hire consultants. So that's my ideology about consultants. But like, for me personally, we have not hired a single consultant till date, because we've been able to solve for everything by ourselves. There are so many blogs out there. There are so many, technical know-hows available online, that you don't really need a consultant unless and until it's a very pressing situation which is out of your control. So whenever something legal, probably I'd hire a consultant. When it's something compliance, I'd hire a consultant. But for my product development or tech or anything, I've not done anything of that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I think, especially in the day and age that we live in, with the amount of information that is available online to sort of understand these things. But even in that sense, is there some way in which some sort of guideline you could possibly provide to someone who wants to do their own research about these fields, in with respect to things like maybe how do they find the right information? How do they also talk to the right people? So any sort of guidelines that you'd like to share for people in this category?
In the food space, what I'd say is I personally look out for people who have been in that space already. So, for example, if I'm in the chewing gum space, I would particularly scout the internet to find people who have been in the chewing gum space, who have created some impact in the chewing gum space, and then try to reach out to them. And also, we need to be initially very, very cautious with respect to how much knowledge we are sharing with them, right?
Mm,
Uh, for example, again, if I want to build my own chewing gum brand and I were to talk to somebody from Wrigley's or ex Wrigley's, and if I were to tell him my idea that, okay, you know what, I want to develop a plastic free chewing gum,
mm,
that could be detrimental on your business because those guys are much ahead, right? So I'd say, you guys have, people have to take it one step at a time. Everything has to be very particularly protected by NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Although NDAs don't really matter in India, people don't really care about the power that it has. And there's no particular guideline as such. It's just, people need to really harness the power of LinkedIn. People have not understood how strong LinkedIn as an asset can be, right? As an app can be. And on LinkedIn, you don't really never need to be shy that you don't know the person and how can I send a connect request, right? Like, LinkedIn is not Facebook. LinkedIn is, you can just go ahead and connect with anybody, right?
yeah,
And on LinkedIn, it makes it so much more easier to get in touch with a CEO of a company rather
yeah,
than a cold email, right? So people really need to understand the power of LinkedIn, and that's why I keep telling people to start joining LinkedIn when they're 17 or 18 years old, so that these guys can build up their profile by the time they grow up to 23, 24 when they're graduating.
yeah,
So all the projects that I got as a consultant and all the people I hire are through LinkedIn. So you can imagine, how strong it can be. And
yeah.
again, with respect to hiring consultants or figuring out who's the right person for you, see the sort of companies he's worked with, try and speak to those founders if that consultant was good or not, because there are a lot of bad fish out there, right? You don't want to get your hand to the wrong person who will take all of your money and not do anything. I've
Mm,
had people who've come back to me after working with consultants who've had 20, 30 years of experience, who kind of screwed them over,
mm,
and come to me saying, okay, can you just solve this problem for us, right? And like, so it experience just does not matter. You need to do your due diligence. You need to see if you can vibe with that person, if he understands what you're trying to portray, if you understand what he's trying to portray. And it's more like a marriage, because initially consultants are the people who will kind of propel your company.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think there's some great insights about consultants there. But staying on the topic about business marriages, right? Another popular place where that possibly comes in is co-founders and
Yeah.
finding the right co-founder. So, what is that process like for you? And also, what insights would you like to share about getting the right co-founder, especially when you're working on technical sort of challenges and deep tech challenges, rather?
Got it. So, I mean, I do not know a lot about tech and deep tech. I can talk about food tech because that's the
Yes.
space I'm in. So with respect to co-founders, like for me, it has been easier because my younger brother is my co-founder, and
Oh,
and the only thing I think matters between co-founders is complementary skills, right? You don't want two people who are strong with product development. If one person is strong with product development, you got to find a person who is strong with the other aspect of the business, right? So it is like a jigsaw puzzle, right? Like it has to be symbiotic. People, what you don't know, the other person should know, and what they don't know, you should know.
mm,
And initially, before Good Gum, I was running the company by myself, and at that point in time, it was always difficult to take decisions because it was only about myself. Who would I brainstorm with? That was the problem at all times, right? But when there are two or three people as co-founders, it becomes much more easier to actually brainstorm and see the pros and cons of everything. Yeah. So I'd say, like, solopreneur is good up till a point, but then after a point when you need to actually scale up, you need to find people who are equally invested in the business as you are, and that would only happen with a co-founder. So again, I'd say, co-founder is a tighter marriage than a consultant, because, you got to stick along. And I have seen companies that have, who have just gone down south because of the wrong co-founders coming together, right? So you really need to, once you're a solopreneur, if I have to bring a new co-founder on, it's not a matter of 2 or 3 days that I, just give him a co-founder tag. I'll probably, try to work with him for a 3-4 months, see, if the bandwidths match, if the frequencies match, and then probably take a call that, okay, this might be the right person. And if it's a person who actually wants to join as a co-founder, if it was me who wants to join a company as a co-founder, it would be the same, right? Like, I wouldn't want to just start working with a company as a co-founder where my value is not understood. So working or trying to figure out the bandwidth matching in the first 2-3 months is equally important to, kind of understand, okay, what value are you bringing to the table? And again, I don't have the experience to tell you about finding a co-founder, because the co-founder was my younger brother here, and he looks after the marketing and design and the tech space, and that's what his expertise is. Whereas I have worked in product development before, business development before, so it's been easier for us to tackle it here.
Yeah, I think the complementary skills goes such a long way, especially when you're
Yeah,
starting. Which is
yeah.
okay, let's move to the journey now. And so with your idea, which is a good gum, which is it has a potential to obviously scale extremely because it's a very noble problem that you're going at. But for a lot of people out there who have problems in sort of a similar space, and especially with sustainability and sustainability oriented businesses, right? They always have a notion in their head that okay, maybe it is not such a economically viable business going forward, and it's more driven by their passion, and they're not able to figure out how a passion can translate into, let's say, a problem that can be solved at scale with good economics, right? So for someone who's in like some sort of a similar dilemma about entering the space, what would you have to suggest to first, and let's look at this in two ways and how to tackle it. One is with initial market validation, and how do you sort of go about that? And in another one is then to think about exploring scale and growth, and what frameworks can you use to assess that idea very well. So first,
Got
let's
it.
start with the initial market validation.
Got it. So, the first thing I'd like to mention here is that sustainability, or anything related to sustainability, is a business that is going to put the consumer out of their comfort zone, right? So you're basically trying to change their habit. If a person has been used to eating an ice cream with a plastic spoon, you giving them a wooden spoon or a edible spoon is you trying to change their habit, right? So anything initially is going to take its time, right? So for all the people who want to actually venture into the space, I would say, start with moonlighting, have a full-time job, and try to do this on the side to see, because it takes time. When you put a seed, it takes time to even come out as a sprout, and then it becomes a sapling. So the time frame between you sowing the seed and it becoming a proper full-fledged plant where it can grow by itself is where you need to have a financial backing, right? And that financial backing can come with your full-time job, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of companies out there who are okay with some sort of moonlighting, or you try to find a flexible job that gives you that time and space for you to work on your passion, right? The same was with in my case. Like, I made a bit of savings, and then I invested that into my business, because I knew for a fact that it is going to take some time to actually push people out of their comfort zone. And secondly, uh, change is inevitable. So for example, a plastic-free chewing gum was not available in India until last year, right? But there are multiple number of brands who do this sort of a chewing gum in the US, in UK, and where you can kind of figure out that, okay, we are at least 5 to 10 years behind the US and UK with respect to any tech, right? Like, those guys had. If those guys have something today, that is probably going to enter India 5 or 6 years after. So it's about getting that head start, and just starting off at first. Like, even if you can get your first 1,000 customers, that is a proven concept, and you guys can we can put it into our heart saying, okay, this is going to work, because there are 1,000 people. The first 100 and the first 1,000 customers are your investors, to be honest, initially, right? And if they are investing their time and their support into your business in those initial days, you know that your product is validated in the market, and you just need to give it time. Because at least in the food tech space is what I know, valuations don't grow as fast as the tech space do. And For me, I'm happy being bootstrapped. I don't really want to, hyper valuate my company and, grow exponentially. But again, that's a personal motive what people have. But when it's respect to a passionate business, that something like this in the sustainable space, I don't really think valuations matter. It what matters is the impact you can create on people, and that sort of impact, is more long lasting than the revenue that comes in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. Yeah. Okay, let's move a little further along the journey now. And one of the things you mentioned, obviously, is uh, the hyper growth phase, right? Whether it's valuations or whether it's probably as compared to other, let's say, traditional tech businesses, the scale and growth also probably doesn't happen as rapidly. It sort of takes its own time to sit in with the people and then sort of take off after that.
Yeah.
So when someone's thinking about exploring scale and growth and sort of figuring that out, what do they need to know, especially with scaling this sort of a business?
Got it. So there are two sides to this coin here. There are some people who plan for scale much before there is a need for scaling. Basically, I would say with respect to machinery, or if you're in the manufacturing space, when you are selling 10 kilos of product, you have machinery that can manufacture 1,000 kilos of product a day. So there are a few people who invest in that sort of equipment much before there is a need for it. And there are a few people like myself where, we wait for a point where there is where the supply is lesser, lesser than the demand. And that's when you actually want to invest and look at scaling, right? So there are again pros and cons of both. In my case, we are at a point where we have boatloads of orders, but we are not able to fulfill that. And now I really feel that, okay, we need to invest in equipment, and invest a bit more of money. But when people get invested in pretty early stages, those guys lose the value for money, and that's when they just go out splurging everywhere. And that could go wrong when there is not the demand in such sort of products, at least in the food or the sustainability space, is never going to grow exponentially. It is always going to grow linear, right? So we need to plan in a linear scale, because it's I mean, it's very difficult to equate food and tech. Like, tech is with respect to data, with respect to how many downloads you have on an app. So the amount of marketing you do, you're going to get that increase in your app downloads. But with respect to food products or food tech, it is a physical product that is sold, right? And unless and until you get that repeat purchase, you will not really require to scale exponentially with respect to your manufacturing and with respect to your ops. With respect to scaling food companies, my what has worked in my case is, waiting for demand to grow to a point and then take decisions to grow further. And I think you also mentioned about what sort of infrastructure, etc., that people should be aware about, right? Like, I talk about investment in this place. People really, right now, everybody wants to get funded by a VC. I don't know why is that the thing, like, just because you raised money from a venture capitalist does not mean your company is doing well, or does not mean anybody's company is doing well, right? If we are able to grow our company in a bootstrap profitable manner, that is something healthy, right? If you're not requiring to raise funds from the outside and you're growing month on month, that is something that will that basically your company is much stronger than the companies who are funded with truckloads of money but are actually not profitable, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of alternative fundraising mechanisms that people can actually harness apart from the VC culture. Crowdfunding is picked up. There are a lot of grants out there that companies, incubators, etc., are offering. The government has so many grants to offer in the food space, particularly. It's VCs is one side of the coin, but we also need to understand the power of all the other types of fundraise that options that are available, because those are no strings attached.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and just because a VC is ready to give you money does not mean your life is going to get easier. Like I have been in companies before where the VCs were a pain in the ass, right? Like it would be better if they were not there.
Yeah,
If they were not there, and their money also was not there.
yeah,
And there are VCs who can be parasites, who can come, and completely chew your business down because of their motives. All they want is increase in valuation, increase in sales. They don't really care about what the consumer is talking about, what's the feedback, etc., etc.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's talk about market research. And I think we came across like a couple of the pop-up videos that you were doing with Cup Park, right, to
Yeah,
figure out like the taste and flavors to make the good gum better. So it's some pretty interesting activities and a very interesting approach to market research in general, right? So on that note, when it comes to taking such decisions or to take up these sort of activities, what is sort of like the thought process that goes behind it in terms of and the decision making that comes with it? First, when we'll talk about using market research or peer research and data, and how much does that have a role to play? And then let's talk about, like in this case, how creativity and intuition came to the fore, right? And how that was then used in a very creative way to sort of get the validation, get the ideas that you needed. So first, let's talk about market research from a data perspective and a
got it,
peer and competitor analysis perspective.
got it. So market research from a data perspective, I wouldn't say matters initially in a business. It only matters, obviously, when you're getting into the business, you want to know for sure that there is a market for this, and data, when data backs you that, okay, in our case, that $0.8 billion are spent on chewing gums in India every year, that gives you some sort of thought that, okay, maybe even if I'm taking 1% of that chunk, that
Mm,
would be a good amount of business for myself, right? So that gives you that initial validation for the concept that, okay, maybe the chewing gum business is large enough, and that gives you an idea if further on, when you're looking to raise funds, or further on when you're looking to actually get some grants, even those companies look for a market size, like what sort of impact are you going to create if it's a grant, or what sort of market value are you going to create with your company if it's a venture capitalist. So having going through all of these research studies, and having backing that, okay, there are proven businesses in this space. Obviously, I don't think anything in India is novel anymore. Every business exists, every sort of business exists, and figuring out, like what is the average spend of a consumer in these metropolitan cities. Looking at those sort of data can actually, initially give us a thought of, okay, where should I launch? If it's a product, where should I start off? What should be my first two, three cities? Where are my ideal customers? What is the literacy rate? Where do actually people care about sustainability, right? So harnessing the power of these peer research studies would actually, rather it'll make your 500-meter run shorter, and it'll make it a 100-meter run by just, tactically making those choices by looking at data.
mm,
Obviously, it would obviously not work out all the time, but it's something that these studies are based on something in the past, so obviously there is some backing to it. So that's that. So that makes you take those tactical decisions that, okay, this is what I should be launching, or this is how I should be launching. What sort of packaging should I go ahead with? But with respect to creativity, say for example, in our case, what flavors of chewing gum should I launch? What
mm.
should be the pack size of the chewing gum, right? How many chewing gums are people willing to buy? Like, because there are a few things which are not tangible. You will not obviously find all of that data on a research paper. And
Yeah.
for that, those things, what we usually do is, we've created a few focus group of about 200, 300 different people from different age groups, from different lifestyle groups,
Mm,
friends of friends, family, etc. And try to sample with them, give them the products, get their feedback, and have a one-on-one conversation with them. So we what we do with our interns also is, we give the database of all the consumers that we have, and actually try and do a one-on-one conversation with them every 2 months or every 3 months to understand what issues they are facing, if it is why have they stopped ordering, or why have they reduced the order size of theirs. You know when you have that personal connect with the person, with your ideal customer initially, before you launch the product, it is going to be your ideal customer. After you've launched the product, it is your customer. So if you have that personal connect, people get attached to the brand, and once a person is attached to the brand, even if they are not your direct consumers, they are going to talk well about your product wherever they go. So and also, up to a certain extent, there is also a bit of gut feeling that that a founder and the founding team has to take. It's not always that we always get the best feedback from everybody. There
Yeah.
are feedbacks, there are comments that actually try to put you down, and if we let that affect our mindset, we would not be in the business, right? We'd rather be working in a company where nobody is going to come and put us down.
Yeah.
But in our case, because we're entrepreneurs, we need to we need to keep our ears open for all sorts of feedback that come in. But again, what I keep telling everybody that I work with, at least in my team, that okay, if somebody said our chewing gums were bad, how many people said our chewing gums were bad? Out of 100, if say one person or two people don't like it, neglect the fact that they actually commented on it, right? Like if the rest 95% like it, go ahead with it. So you're always never going to get 100% desirable solution or 100% desirable answer to every question of yours. So your consumer feedback is going to do say 70%, and you need to take your gut feeling and put that 30%, and also take backing of the tactical research.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think such a important combination. I think with the respect to the questions that you want answered and insights that you really want, it's such a combination of like three things. One is secondary research and data that's already there and know how to analyze that and get answers. Then know that wherever you can't get answers and you need live interactions, go for primary research and talk to these people. But
exactly.
on the third and more advanced level is where your own intuition comes into the picture.
Absolutely.
It's about you and your business and you understand it best. So
Absolutely.
it's very nice layered sort of an approach, I guess, to market research.
Yeah. And also we do a lot of offline events where, obviously a lot of people walk, like you have a lot of people to talk to. Even if they are not your consumers, you can talk to those people. And when you actually start, when you get into the business, when you look at when you start getting invites from events, you tend to understand that okay, you understand the psyche of the customer that walks into an event, right? Like if you're going to a concert, it's going to be a certain age group with a certain liking or hobby. When you go to a flea market, it's going to be a certain age group. So you can tend to go to such events and then try to do that primary research, because it gives you access to people with different backgrounds in all of those different events that you are going to.
Yeah.
So that's a possible place of finding neutral people who are not going to have any biases and are
Mm.
going to give you honest feedbacks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about again sort of moving in the life cycle of a business. I think right. Well, and now we sort of come to customer acquisition and beyond that, customer retention as well. Probably like the two most crucial things that can in a consumer business, at least that's most important. So with your marketing activities itself, you have been very active on Instagram with your branding, with your marketing, especially in such a space or the industry that you're in where there is a limited room and it's very cramped because a lot of brands are aggressively marketing and are aggressively being creative in their own right. So when it comes to for newbies, when it comes to just from your own experiences and learnings, what you've seen, what would you suggest in terms of acquiring a customer? That is a lot of things, right? A very layered question, because there's reaching them online through ads, there is building communities, there's digital, there's on ground, there's all sorts of pitching, and then the pitching aspect of it, you can pitch like emotional side of things, or just go by data facts. So all of these things around acquiring a customer, and after this we'll talk about retaining customers on like maybe let's say like a limited budget. and how do you keep doing that? Let's start with acquiring. Yeah.
Understood. So how we go about is, initially we did not really, so one major activity that we used to do at my earlier company is consumer profiling, right? Like, who is your consumer? So how we start off is, okay, our consumer wakes up and he probably goes to the yoga center or to cult for their exercise. My ideal consumer has a smoothie bowl for breakfast over a crispy or or an oily dosa. My ideal customer cycles to work. My ideal customer buys a coffee from a Blue Tokai or a Third Wave, right? And you try to create a customer journey and then try to do what those companies do, right? So if a person is using Ola every day, if a person is using or drinking Third Wave coffee every day, if a person is going to cult every day, try to figure out what those people are selling on their platforms, right? Like, are they only talking about their products, or are they creating communities, and then try to inculcate those ideologies into your customer acquisition strategy. So that's a very broad answer that I can give, but so again, it was initially we used to market our product to 10 different customer psyches, right? And that makes it equally difficult for you to track which sort of advertisement is working for you on Facebook, because you have five different set of advertisements for five different people, right? But when you kind of actually double down on, okay, what do you want to sell your product on the basis of? Are you solving for convenience? Are you solving for sustainability? Are you solving for just indulgence and taste? Are you solving for health? And then when you create a customer psyche, and then you're actually focused on just selling that idea, or just selling your product to that ideal customer, and then go hard on advertising on those lines, I feel that works out better rather than trying to acquire people of all different age groups, all different psyches, because it makes it equally difficult to, kind of acquire customers on Facebook, where ad space is limited, but people who want to buy that is less. So what I'd say is, try to create impact advertisements. So what we've understood for us is, we are solving for sustainability. We not even solving for sustainability. Initially, our pitch was, okay, our chewing gums are going to make the earth a better place to live in. But then we kind of understood that in India, people don't care. When a person is walking in a flea market with a plastic carry bag, and drinking a milkshake from a plastic straw, how am I going to sell my chewing gum to him? When I say it's a plastic free chewing gum. And then we kind of, twisted our pitch a bit, and we told them, okay, what you're chewing usually is plastic. We
Oh.
want to make, yeah, we want to make our consumers spit what they're already eating. So whenever, say, if I'm chewing a center fresh and I'm on my Instagram and I see an ad like, hey, what you're chewing is plastic, I instantly be like, what are you saying? And that creates that intrigue, and that is something which is not focused to anybody but everybody, right? Everybody has had chewing gums in their life, and you're actually targeting the activity directly. So that creates impact. So if initially we were only talking about sustainability and, okay, you know what, there's so much chewing gum stuck on our public property, this, that, people don't really give a damn. So we need to understand again, to a certain extent, that what works in the West would not necessarily work in India. You have, if your idea is based on something that is from the West, you got to Indianize it and sell for India, right? Like, when people say make for India or make in India, it says, kind of tweak your advertisement, tweak your pitch, and make it worthy for India. Uh, because that would make your focus very strong. And again, like I mentioned, we really believe in doing offline events because we can directly have a conversation. On Instagram, it's a 2-second activity where a person sees an ad. So the impact that you can create on digital platforms is much lesser, unless you have truckloads of money to burn on advertisements and every fourth advertisement is going to be yours. But if we can tap into events, if we can work with people who are influencing a certain community in a very strong fashion, that really works well for us. So, and we don't even gauge it in a way that, okay, if you're doing an event in Bombay, maybe the sales for those 2 days were bad, but we have at least educated 2,000 people who walked in that event. They may buy it or they may not buy it, but they know for a fact now that their chewing gums are made of plastic, right? And whenever the next time they see somebody chewing gum in their family, in their peers, they're obviously always going to remember what we once told them. So we never gauge the success of an offline event or gauge the success of whatever digital sort of campaigns we do by just sales, right? Like that's one thing people really do wrong, where sales nahi aa raha hai. They
Mm,
say, okay, we are spending so much, but we're not getting sales.
mm,
Maybe your sales can come probably a year or year and a half later,
mm,
because you're in the business of sustainability. And again, the first point that I mentioned is you're pushing the consumer out of their comfort space,
yeah.
right? We've had Anupam Mittal try our chewing gum, and Anupam Mittal clearly told us that, okay, you know what, there's a lot of work that you need to do. Your chewing gums are not even close to the regular chewing gums in the market. It is very difficult for you to, uh, uh, make somebody compromise for a product that they're usually excited about. So what he meant to say is people are usually excited about chewing gums, but your chewing gums are making them compromise on their taste expectations and their flavor expectations, right? So that's so if I were to be if I were to be a person who would be affected by such sort of feedback, I would have shut my company down. But
Mm,
you can't please everybody. You cannot, a product cannot please every consumer out there. So you
mm,
just have to be at it. Some people understand sustainability. Some people understand better health and nutrition over crap products. So if you have your focus set, if you have your focus set and you know what your consumer base is, if you
mm,
can just understand strongly what your consumer is, then automatically avenues start appearing where where you think that, okay, this is where my consumer is going to come into.
mm,
And we do a lot of retail. People have forgotten the power of retail in the past 4 5 years. Everybody wants to go D2C, right? But retail, if you see, again, talking about tactical data, retail sales is 99.7% of all the product that is sold in India is retail, and 0.3% is online. So just imagine the enormous size of retail with respect to sales. And retail can get difficult at times, but again, when your focus is set that, okay, I'm going to place my product in a store X, I
mm,
know for a fact that, okay, again, what we do is we create like I mentioned, a consumer profile. Now, if I'm selling a chewing gum, I need the store that I sell my chewing gums in. I need that store to have artisanal chocolate. I need it to have an artisanal snack brand. I need it to have a cleaner label beverage. If those products are present in those stores, they are present there because of the fact that the store is probably being able to sell that product.
mm,
And your product being there is definitely going to be a profitable scene.
mm,
Whereas other companies, what they do is they just go all out, putting their product in every store, and then kind of scratching their heads about, yeah, product is not getting sold out of here. So we put our product into the places where we know our consumer is going to walk into, because we know who our consumer set is. So
mm,
that significantly reduces our customer acquisition cost.
mm. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, a couple of points over there that I want to come back to. And one
Yeah,
is with sales channels and distributions is one thing that we would definitely love to talk about. But first, let's quickly cover retaining customers as well, and what sort of strategies do you have around it, and what are some principles that you need to keep in mind for to have people come back once they've tried a product.
got it. So, like I mentioned, Instagram is a very powerful tool. The first thing, why we are active on Instagram is to actually nudge the customer that, okay, guys, we exist. People's attention span is so less nowadays that, okay, if I've had something yesterday, I might not even remember what I had yesterday today,
Mm,
right? So constantly being able to nudge those people that and talk to them about, or showcase to them that, okay, these are the new things that we have launched, or maybe these are the offers that you can explore. So just trying to be out there in itself is one sort of a retention strategy. We do a lot of email marketing. We actually do a lot of discounting for people who have bought a product before. So
mm,
we put in a coupon code with every time a person purchases a product, so that brings them back to buy the product again. What we also do on Amazon is we try to poach consumers that buy the product from us on Amazon to become our website customers, because we get better margins on that. So this is something unfiltered again. Probably Amazon is going to, if they find out, but we actually give a free chewing gum if a person scans a QR code with every order that we send with Amazon, and bring that customer to our website. And on our website, we give a lot of customizing options. We are not very strong on, we are not very, hell bent on having packs of 4 or packs of 5, or having that sort of bigger pack or larger ticket size products. We also are okay to sell a single pack of chewing gums, and that is very important for people to retain customers, that okay, your customer may or may not have 1,000 rupee to spend every single time. You need to be flexible for them to buy whatever product size they want to buy at any point in time. So that's one strategy, is email marketing, discounting. And again, like I mentioned, we do a bi-monthly call, that we just talk to the consumer. What did you like about the product, or why haven't you bought in 45, 50 days? Then try to understand, okay, maybe a person has a problem with the packaging, maybe a person lives in a very humid place, and maybe our product is not surviving well in that place. So we try to get that feedback and see, and then reverse engineer, because that's the strength of being a startup, that you're not your supply chains are small. Making any change in your product is not going to take a very long time. So say, for example, if a person calls me from Kolkata saying, Mayank, all of your chewing gums here are completely melting because it is super humid. So it makes it easier for us to, kind of understand, okay, maybe because of humidity, our packaging is not so strong. Let's work on the packaging and work it out. When your ears are open to the consumers, even if you don't imbibe those changes in your product, the consumer still has the trust in you, because you at least listen to them. So that's one very strong customer retention strategy that we have, is we talk to consumers and we have a personal rapport with them, that okay, this is how it is. And when we start seeing, a person ordering a lot on Amazon, we don't really know what their address and phone number is, but we send in a handwritten note along with every product. So that person feels loved, and okay, the consumer, or the company actually cares about me being the consumer. And if you can do that to your first 5,000, 6,000 consumers, that 6,000 multiplying to 30 is not going to take any time.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant insight for both of these things.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk quickly about one of the things about this space, or businesses like this, which is perfection, right? Because obviously, when you're talking about some consumable product, it's not like you can do a very fast beta test where a half cooked, half done product, cooked not in literal sense, obviously, but you can't give it to the customer and gather feedback so quickly, right? There is a certain level of perfection that needs to be done before you can even validate the idea and take it to a customer and capture feedback from it. So when in such a situation, how do you reflect on, we'll talk more abstractly for this one, but more reflecting on perfection in general, when it comes to first where perfection becomes a necessity, and where do you sort of draw the line? And the second, draw the line between the second thing, which is perfection becoming an obsession in this business, where you keep waiting till you have the perfect thing which everyone's going to love, and then only then start selling it, right? So what is your take on this whole, let's age-old debate of perfection versus
Got it. So
yeah.
again, it's initial. In this case, initial is gut feeling. So if I feel that this is a product that I can eat on a daily basis, or I can use on a daily basis, maybe it is perfect, right? Like let's do a second test. And the second test is then going to be with your peers, your close group of friends, close group of family. Basically, it's to a point, it is about gut feeling. If I feel, if your core team feels that okay, this product is ready to go out, just go out. Like, you in my case, it was easier because I'm a solo founder and that basically they're co-founders. Both of us like the product. Okay, let's go out and let's test it with a smaller group of people in a unlisted manner. Like, you don't have to really give it to them in the final packaging.
Mm,
Let's or final whatever the final product is going to look like. Just try to get some basic feedback. And it need not even necessarily be a very deep dived insight, because a consumer is going to eat a product and forget about it, right?
mm,
So they're not going to talk about the texture, they're not going to talk about the color and all of that. It's just an overall liking or disliking of the product.
mm,
And out of those 300 or 400 people, if you can find out, like, okay, if there are significant number of people who don't like the product, and
mm,
in my terminology, I would say, uh, if 90% of the people like it and 10 don't, I'm going ahead with it.
mm,
Right? People usually be like, okay, I want all 100 people to like the product before going ahead. That is a very wrong conception, because India is a massive market. India has a very different taste palette, etc., across the nation. So again, like I mentioned, you are not going to be able to please everybody.
mm,
So out of 140 crore people, if you're able to please 0.1% of the consumers also, that's a huge customer set already,
mm,
right? So I would say, just try to figure out if there's significant number of people who actually find a fault with the product, or if they have an issue with the product. See if you can actually, if it's a very small change that you need to make. If there's a very small change you need to make, then just iterate it and make that change. But if there's just a 10% or 15% of your beta test saying, okay, you need to radically change your product, but 85% are fine with it, go ahead.
mm.
So that's again a combination of gut feeling and reassurance from your ideal users or ideal consumers.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. I think that addresses that debate or that line very nicely.
Yeah,
We'll come to another thing, and another one of the things that you mentioned, which becomes super crucial in an industry like this, which is designing and packaging, right? And a lot of, I think, psychological thought needs to go behind it and all of that. So, in this journey of deciding what an ideal design is, or coming to where it's at right now, what were some mistakes? What are some learnings that you had? That you'd like to share? First is on the designing aspect and how sort of designing. Then this is strictly talking about the product itself, and another one is approaching the packaging and what are some learnings from that. So first, let's talk about like the designs.
got it. So with respect to product development, initially, so what happens in a small business is you don't necessarily have access to the best of ingredients initially only,
Mm,
because a lot of vendors out there work on a heavy minimum order quantity.
mm,
And from the beginning, you can't really, invest in such massive quantities unless you see some actual returns that, okay, you are getting some customer base.
mm,
So I would say we change our recipe of the chewing gum every week, right?
mm,
Like, we constantly better it. So there has to be a leeway for change when you're starting off. And again, going back to the perfection wala spot, you can start your journey at 80 and slowly take it to 100, right?
mm,
You don't necessarily need to start at 100. When you start at 80, you can constantly iterate, and that's the beauty of a small company, that's the beauty of being a startup, where you can take your certain amount of time to master the product. So we constantly keep changing our product design. When I would say the product development, in that matter, we constantly try to make changes in the recipe, make it softer, make it try to do a lot of changes to the product, and see which batch is doing better, and try to understand from consumers, okay, if there's any issue or no.
mm,
Um so so that's with respect to, again, what I'd say as a line is, be open for change, right? Like, if people are giving you some feedback, try to iterate that into your, and keep that leeway open. And so what happens is, that's the thing we can do, because it's a in-house manufactured product. If it were a contract manufactured product, I would have to, fill the room up with chewing gum and then just think about selling the product.
mm,
Because we are making it on a daily basis, we can make those changes. So that's one learning, that, okay, having an in-house production is good until a point where that, okay, this is the recipe. this is perfect, and then go into a massive manufacturing setup. And with respect to packaging, if you see, initially, we created a key line, or the packaging design was a very minimalist packaging, which was again very West influence, where people understand minimalism. But then, as we started selling those products, people did not really resonate with the packaging. It was too dull for people. And India as a consumer, in the Indian consumers are people who really want to show off, and talk about the good things that they ate. So the packaging was not looking at as fancy as the product was, right? So we had to kind of Indianize the packaging and make it a bit more fuller. And that's the second sort of packaging that we have now in the paper box. So the first paper box that we had did not have any plastic lining on the inside. And the humidity was such that, humidity would go through the box and make the chewing gum soggy. That we realized that, okay, maybe because we don't have a plastic layering on the inside, let's work on the paper box. So while we were working on the paper box, we launched the tin box in between, so that we don't really take a hit on our chewing gum, on our sales, and the tin boxes could keep fulfilling wherever required. And we got to a point where the tins were not scalable anymore, because it's a very tedious process to pack the tins, and the tin prices are very fluctuating. We moved back to the paper box with a plastic lining on the inside. And this was a major change, because we've always wanted to be 100% plastic free product, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, we had to have a small layer of plastic on the inside, because without it, the product would not sell, right? So there are again certain gut feeling, gut calls that you got to take as a founder, that, okay, if I am able to, in our case, say for example, if I'm selling chewing gums, um, 21 grams of chewing gum go in a paper box, right? So how I look at it is, I am replacing 21 grams of plastic chewing gums with my chewing gum, right? So I have already saved 21 grams of plastic from going into the landfill. And if I'm doing that at the expense of using zero point 0.3 grams of plastic on my packaging, I'm still square. I'm still a plastic positive company, right? So there will be haters for it. People be like, okay, you're selling a plastic free chewing gum, but your packaging has plastic in it. Again, is it a significant number of people that are thinking that way? Is it 100% of all your consumers? If it's just 3 or 4, neglected. Your product, at the end of the day, for you to survive, for you to still create impact, your business has to be running, and you need to take calls that are going to let your business keep running, and not your consumers, not always your consumers happy.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's a very great point. Okay, we'll sort of talk a little bit outside the business now, more in terms of sustainability overall, right? And there's a question that we like asking to anyone in this space, because we have and we are going to have quite a few sustainability entrepreneurs and people in this business. And one of the things that we ask them also is to call out sort of some of the actual problems that most people don't really see, right? Which chewing gums is one of these cases, which we were also surprised to find out. But I'm sure there's a lot of different hazards that are hidden in plain sight, but nobody has awareness of these issues and how bad they are for the environment in general. So if you had to reflect on some of these observations and bring this to the forefront, just to create like a lot more awareness around it, what would you say? And again, let's look at two things. One is things that have a direct impact when it is directly bad and people are continuing to use it. But another one also which has sort of indirect impacts on the environment, probably like the production involves the use of something which is not that great, and then really ruins the environment at a later stage, right? So if you could call out some of these hazards that are associated with it.
So, I mean, I don't understand a lot of tech, but from the consumer background, where you can find issues is, tea bags have a lot of plastic, sunscreen has a lot of plastic, sunscreen is the world's largest microplastic polluting mechanism, right? Like, people apply sunscreens on beaches, and they're very close to water bodies, and once they move into the water, the sunscreen washes off, and these sunscreens usually have a lot of plastic in it, and that's microplastic because it's in an emulsion form. And this is how it enters the ecosystem. The fish end up eating it, and the bigger fish eating the smaller fish, and that's how it enters the human body, right? Like, there are studies which say microplastic found in the lungs, microplastic found in the bloods of human being. This is clearly because of abuse of the material. Like, I am not against plastic if plastic is used wonderfully, if plastic is used in a idealistic manner where it is recycled perfectly. There's nothing as good as plastic in the environment, right? Like, it's a material that can be recycled up to 80 times, right? No material or even metal has that sort of characteristic. So recycling in India is a very big problem, if people can solve for recycling and actually segregating plastic. Because when I was studying in the UK and the US, people never really used to speak about don't use plastic. People used to say, okay, people are educated themselves to segregate and put the right sort of plastic into the right sort of bin so that it gets recycled at the end. So if it is recycled well, it's great. Tea bags have a lot of plastic in it, and to be honest, rather than calling out for problems, I would say if people can just be curious about everything, right, that in itself solves a problem. If I'm drinking water, okay, how does the RO system work? Like, I would say, there are a lot of pros and cons to everything. So if we are inquisitive about everything that we see and do and observe on a daily basis, there are multiple possibilities of finding problems, and there is a lot of opportunity to solve those problems. Like, I found chewing gums, some person can find spectacles, some people can find phones to be a problem. So as long as people are inquisitive, and it's not that there is a guidebook where, okay, these are the problems that we can solve, but there are a lot of things on a daily basis, right? Aluminum cans, where people think aluminum cans are super sustainable, but Coke that comes in aluminum cans, that has a plastic lining on the inside as well, right? So when people call themselves sustainable and, okay, I'm going to have Coke not in a plastic bottle but in an aluminum can, that is pseudo sustainability. That is still better than drinking from the plastic bottle, but your aluminum can is not the best as well, right? So there are a lot of problems that need to be solved, but it has to come, and when people find it by themselves, it is a better journey, because, like, how I figured chewing gum, it was like, okay, let's solve for this, and then for you it is like, oh wow, I did not know chewing gums were made of plastic. Had I not read about it, we would not be here. So we need to just question everything, is the ideal answer.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll talk about all the things that you mentioned, which is about finding problems and sort of creating businesses around it and being involved as an entrepreneur or as a person on the business side of things, right? Because having a technical background and an expertise, it will be true for a lot of people, but then to translate that into actually solving problems and making a business out of it is again a whole different ball game altogether. So when it comes to this and how you sort of transition into that role, what were some principles, what are some things you were thinking about when choosing the right opportunity across all of your ventures, and how did you sort of stumble upon it? And another one is, how do you also know where you limit your role, and then also know where to like diversify at a certain point of time as well, right? So first we'll talk about choosing the right opportunity.
Got it. So, choosing a right opportunity, again, it's very subject to from person to person. Some people are out there to make money, some people are out there to make impact, some people are out there to make impact plus money, right? Like, this could easily be an NGO or, a non-profit or something like that. But I wanted to be an impact creating organization plus money making thing, right? So out of all the sort of opportunities that come your way, it has to hit in the mind, right? Like, okay, in this role or in this company, am I able to will I be able to feed myself and my family and also create impact? Yes, then let's do it. In some places, for me as a person, I would always limit myself from investing or working with companies that make products that will cause the person's health to deteriorate, right? Like, if there is and if there's any consulting project that comes to me and says, okay, we need to create a very sugary beverage, I'm not going to take it up, right? Like, I'm only going to, and that's my personal ideology, right? Like, if you know what your ideologies are, it makes it very easy to draw a line between what you want to do and what you don't want to do, and amongst what you want to do, what do you want to pursue further, and that obviously comes from the inside. So finding your finding your worth, no, finding your purpose is something very important in work. It's not just in life, but like in work, what are you here for? Like, you
Mm,
know, when we are going to die, we are not going to take all the money with us. So what are you going to leave behind?
mm,
So we need to find what. So for me, my ideology is straight that I don't want to do any. I will only put my money or put my time into products that I'm going to eat or I think my family should eat. I'm not going to make a product or work with a company just for the money because just for the money. If they are, at the end of the day, kind of screwing somebody's health up. So I'm never going to work with a Coke or I'm never going to work with a pan masala company. So that's my ideology. So finding a person's ideology or figuring out your own, inner self that, okay, this is what I'm here for, it makes it very easy to answer the questions that you asked me. Where do you draw your line and what do you pursue further? So in
mm.
my case, I wanted to do an impact creating plus a money making business, right? Like impact creating, because I know for a fact that I want to live this sort of a life. And to live this sort of a life, I need this much amount of money. So with that amount of money, I can't really run a non-profit. So it has to be a culmination of both.
Yeah. That I think that's perfectly makes a lot of sense. We'll come back to sustainability and when we're talking about what we are talking about earlier, which is with the rise of technology, how much of that has been a disruption to the food and consumable industry as a whole, right? And we'll approach this in sort of two different types of companies, which is firstly with respect to startups and what impact they've had and what impact has the nature of startups itself undergone because of the rise of technology. And another, let's look at disruption in traditional businesses because of obviously we're talking about food and consumer the businesses itself here, traditional businesses, but how have they been affected by the rise of technology and all of that? So we'll start off with the startups.
Got it. So, like, I'd say, traditional businesses started off being unsustainable, and now because the consumers are asking for a sustainable product, they move into sustainability.
Mm,
But on the contrary, startups start sustainable, so their growth is always going to be slow.
mm,
In the traditional businesses, they're already making a lot of money with the plastic or the dirty products that they sell, and now they're venturing into sustainability and calling out to consumers saying, okay, you know what, we are also sustainable.
mm,
But in with respect to startups, we want to start being sustainable, so the growth is going to be equally slower. And this is completely coming from a standpoint where consumers are asking for it.
mm,
And consumers ask for it, governments make policies, and which is why you see in countries in continents like Europe, where the EU has made strict rules with respect to plastic abuse, where companies like Coke are launching a paper bottle or reducing their plastic footprint altogether. But the same companies don't give a rat's ass for the sort of plastic abuse that happens in India. The Indian consumer psyche is such that people want a cheaper product because it's a developing country. People want a cheap product first. Second, they care about health, and third, they care about sustainability. Right.
mm,
So solving for that is easier for the traditional businesses because they are making a cheap product at mass, and then they want to go to the third layer talking about sustainability. But with respect to startups, uh, we want to start off being sustainable and being healthy and then talk about being cheap.
mm,
So it's like we are going up the pyramid, they're coming down the pyramid, and and that's how the businesses work. But
mm,
like, I don't know if I'm able to answer your question, but it's in the hand of the consumers to actually be able to control what companies make,
mm,
right? Like, if we as consumers completely stop using plastic water bottles, Bisleri will be out of business, right?
mm,
Like, so it's in the hand of the consumers, and that disruption is not coming from the company side. The companies look at consumer data. They see, okay, why are consumers not buying in this particular area? Maybe Bangalore's crowd is more sustainability oriented. That is why people don't buy plastic water bottles. And
mm,
maybe why their sales have gone down 10% in the last 2 years. So the disruption does not come from the company, at least in the traditional businesses. It is completely because the consumer is asking for it. right? And because consumers are asking for it, startups are solving for those problems and making products that can make an alternative for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll approach a slightly different topic now. One is when you're talking about learning in a particular field, right? And a lot of different, I think we sort of touched upon this earlier when we were talking about doing your own research and learning more about the field and all of that, especially now when there's so much information out there, so many things that you can do. How would you say people structure their learnings and know what is the right opportunity to go for, in which they can get the maximum learning? And we look at two different sort of types of learnings that you can get. One is through courses and certifications that you can do to, and this is for any field, but you can obviously talk from your field and what you've done. And another one is case studies, internships, projects, more practical sort of experience that helps you, right? So what are like the merits and demerits of both of these things, and where do you balance learnings from both of them? So we'll start off with the courses, certifications.
Got it. So I'd say, courses and certifications matter where you have a boss, right? Like if you're working for a company, or if your company is backed by a VC, or you want your company to be backed by a VC, that's where you need those courses and certifications. Obviously I wouldn't completely put that down, because, I think, it is a 50-50 in this case. You need your academics in place, and that academics get fulfilled by having hands-on or on-ground experience. So in my example, I can give you that, okay, I got admits from unis in US and in EU, but they were 2-year master courses. But UK was just a 1-year master course. And why I took that course up was because I could get my certification, which would be pleasing for my further employee within a year, and also utilize that extra year for doing an internship or working with a company which is going to give me that hands-on experience, right? And because I knew for a fact that I want to be in this business, I don't want to be working, but I want to grow my own business. I knew it for a fact that I need to work for a startup to understand what it takes to run a startup, right? So again, being able to define your journey, okay, where do you see, or what do you want to be doing? Do you want to be working for a company? Do you want to be working for a startup? Do you want to start your own startup? If you can create a small plan for yourself that, okay, in the next 10 years, I want to be doing this. At the end of this, what am I going to require? In that case, we can, if in my case, for in the food space, if I want to be working with a HUL, I would still be doing my MBAs, and I would still be doing a lot of certificate courses, because that those are going to be licenses for me to go up the corporate ladder faster. But in my case, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and for being an entrepreneur, it requires jugaad. It requires knacks of the business, and knacks of the business can never be put in a book. It has to be learned from on ground experience, right? So I'd say it is equal 50-50. And another important aspect is finding the right internship or finding the right first job is very important, because what you learn and where you learn from is what you learn from those companies is very important. So there can be some startup that can give you a job, but you're not going to learn as much. So it is up to you of how open you are with your startup and what you learn from there. So in my case, I was quite open with my founder, and I told him that I want to be working here for a year, and post that I want to start my own company. And in that 1 year, I want to do everything that I want to, be working in all the departments. And he was completely okay with it, right? Because I was completely candid with him. He was completely okay with it. And I started with my journey with product development, went on to marketing, went on to doing a bit of manufacturing, and then went on to doing sales. So I learned all the aspects of running the business, and that makes it very, very easy for me to start the business. And after having started the business is when the actual technical know-how of what the things I learned in college, in uni, in all my courses matter.
Yeah, that's a very valid thing. Cool. Let's now talk about sort of the role of dialogue-based education and experience-based education that you had. Probably the people that have sort of molded your way, where you've gotten a lot of not just inspiration, but a lot of perspectives as well, that probably really transformed the way you think about not just like a professional life, but also in general towards your personal life and the kind of priorities that you had, right? And one of the things that's also one of the things that we are trying to solve for here, which is to provide that dialogue based education and perspectives from a local context that really matters to someone. So when it comes to this and in your own journey, how do you think this has benefited you? One, in terms of providing you realistic inspirations to look up to and to get to, and also to better structure your thoughts and build better mental models. How has that helped in creating these frameworks better? So you can cover both these aspects.
Got it, got it. So what I feel is, like Rome was not built in a day. Your mental framework, your mental, your mental state of mind changes every day. So you just have to enjoy the journey, right? Like where you start is not where you're going to be ending in, right? So there's not really a plan that you can make in this case. It's just again a culmination I'd say of what's the right word for this? Like not luck. Yeah, I mean, I would say culmination of luck, and what you decide for yourself is what is the journey that you set out on,
Mm,
and all the people. And again, to get the things that you want to learn from people is up to you, right? Like some person can be put into a room with Ratan Tata, but if that person does not know how to understand or what to learn from him and what sort of questions to ask him, that opportunity is gone to a waste, right? So the only thing we can do as persons, as human beings, is try to be just try to understand or learn from every experience that we have. And the persons that we meet on the way are just going to catalyze that reaction, right? So it's because the first job that I found was not through LinkedIn, it was through a reference. So if I did not have that reference, I wouldn't have got that first job. If I hadn't got that first job, I wouldn't have had that experience and met the people on the journey, right? So it's there's only there are things that we can control for ourselves, but there are things that are outside of our control, and those need to work in our favor, right?
mm,
But what I've understood over the last 7 years after graduating is, uh, we can only control things that are in our hands. If I want a job with Britannia, I can only put in my CV, I can only give the interview.
mm,
Getting the job is not in my control, right? So we need to be open to all sorts of opportunities, to all sorts of feedback that can come our way,
mm,
right? And again, like I mentioned, reiterating the fact, just try to find your ideology. Like what are you solving as a person, right?
mm,
Like why are you here? Like, if you can answer that question, um uh, whether you want to work, whether you want to start your own company, all of these questions start becoming easier, you
mm.
know that clears up a lot of clutter from your brain, right?
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I mean, I think that should be able to answer your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I think it's a good journey and you elaborated very well as well.
Yeah,
We'll do a final couple of questions and more
yeah.
light-hearted ones. And one is this is one thing that we really like asking entrepreneurs everywhere to sort of gather their answers, which is the concept of work-life balance, and then post that also what you do for your own mental well-being and mental health, because it's one of the things that obviously is everyone talks about it, and we really want some good answers coming out of it as perspective. So first, let's
Got it.
talk about work-life balance and your definition of it, and then post that we'll move into your mental health and how do you sort of maintain that and what practices you employ.
Got it. So work-life balance for me as a definition, I would say, uh, the the uh, the ability of your brain to not be able to think of work all the time. Like if you're with friends, you're with friends. Your brain should not be in your manufacturing unit. When you're in your manufacturing unit, you're over there, right? So if you are able to have that balance, and you know where to draw the line. Like for me, the for me, I hate the concept of burnt out and people just trying to overwork themselves, burning the midnight fuel, this, that. So I feel life's a marathon. So it's about consistency and doing things that we do honestly, rather than, do overworking and then, having a detrimental effect on your health, right? So I make it a fact to, actually go on my morning run. I make it a point to, actually sit down and meditate for 45 minutes every day, because these are things I have put into my life after feeling burnt out from all the things that I do, right? So this could be an advice to all the people who are listening, because before they get on to their entrepreneurial journey, it is important to be balanced in work and life from day one, right? Rather than having to firefight later on, once you start having those mental health issues, once you start having those physical health issues, right? Yeah, I mean, that's and also what I do is I over the years, at least this year particularly, I have stopped using Instagram as a personal profile, because what I've understood is, it was a anxiety triggering factor for me, right? Like, back in the days, in our parents' time, their friends could be driving a Mercedes in Delhi, and he would be in Bangalore, but he would not know he's driving a Mercedes there. So, he would not know about his successes, and that would not make him anxious about life. But in our case, it has become so much more easier that, okay, my friend who graduated with me in 2016 is driving a massive car in the US, and what am I doing for myself? That creates anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So I have figured that as a trigger out for me, and that, is I would say that is a game changing work life balance creator for me. That, okay, if I'm not, actually giving my time to Instagram, I'm sane and I'm content with what I'm doing, and I'm not being affected by external triggers.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very valuable tip, and a lot of people can attest to that as well.
Yeah,
Cool. We'll do a final question, which is, if you
yeah.
had to go back to your engineering days, and change and do something differently, or to change something, what would you do? And again, two different contexts. One is if you had to go back to your first year of college and change something, and another context in which you had to go back to your final year of college and do something. So
Got it.
let's do first year first. Yeah.
First year, I would definitely want to start a business, like, after having started a business, after having graduated, and after understanding that it is a game changer, you're always motivated, right? Like, not like engineering was not motivating enough. I was an avid quizzer and everything, but if I could actually start a business, way back in my first year, that was one change that I would do. Probably have a cloud kitchen or an ice cream parlor of my own,
Mm.
uh, so that I could fund myself back then. So that was one change. And in my final year, uh, I don't think I would, I don't know. My final year. In my final year, I report and, kind of gave my gave a I gave a presentation on that. But if I actually worked on the jugards that I do right now, like, the way I get through people on LinkedIn, if I were to utilize those tricks and actually find a good internship in a good company, I would do that change. So
Yeah.
use LinkedIn properly is one thing, in the final year, that's very, very important.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Okay, awesome. I think that brings us to the end of our questions.
Perfect.
And, yeah, thank you
Awesome.
so much for coming on the
Yeah.
podcast. I think it's very great to cover the entire journey, a lot of insights coming out of it, and very happy to see, obviously, college alumni, first of all, and also being such a sustainability change maker as you are. So it's been a great podcast again. Thank you so much for
Thank you. Thank you.